What's going on, everybody? Welcome back on into the Space Cowboy Show. I'm your host, Ricardo, and I could finally announce the return of Mock Draft Mondays here on the channel because now we know where the Cowboys are going to be selecting in the first round of the 2026 NFL Draft. And so if you just want to go ahead and skip to the draft picks that I make in this mock draft, the timestamp's right here, or you can just click on the chapter section in the description and you can skip to that part of the video. I completely understand. But before we do that, I want to first say, if you haven't done so already, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and hit that notification bell. Also, the show is powered by Crushman Media. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to go check out all the other shows on the Crushman Media Network. Now, as we're aware, the Cowboys losing to the Giants at the tail end of the 2025 NFL season helped them secure the 12th overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. We were now waiting to see what would happen with Green Bay to determine where the Cowboys were going to select. And the great part about that is they were a first-round exit in the most hilarious way possible. A 27-16 lead with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And thanks to the Chicago Bears, the Cowboys will hold the 20th overall pick in the first round of the 2026 NFL Draft, meaning they're going to have two top 20 picks, which is crucial because I'm pretty sure most of these picks are going to go into the defensive side of the ball, barring any crazy things that happen throughout the offseason. Now, what I do want to talk about are the needs the Cowboys are going to have going into this draft as we currently stand. We know that there are guys that they're going to have to pay, and I do have some expectations that they're going to pay some of these guys, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But defensively, I'm going to just keep it straightforward with you guys. Any defensive help. But in terms of the order of operations in which I think the Cowboys need to address the defense, I think the number one need is edge. After that, I would say linebacker and then corner. But they are all of equal importance considering how bad this defense is. Now, as of this recording, they have not hired a defensive coordinator yet. So if I post this video and they hire somebody, just keep in mind that we're still waiting to figure out, okay, what kind of personnel is this guy going to be trying to run, the scheme, all that type of stuff. Again, we will adjust as we go through. And the final disclaimer that I'm going to have is that this is before the Combine, the Senior Bowl, everything like that. So there are going to be situations where guys will be moving up and down mock draft boards. I'm using PFF as I always have done so for the past couple of seasons now, to get these mock drafts going. So with all of that out of the way, I think it's time we launch our first mock draft of the 2026 offseason.
With the 12th pick, the Dallas Cowboys select
Mansour Delane, cornerback, LSU. Now look, I understand that plenty of you Cowboys fans are scared of the fact that taking another corner from LSU in the first round, considering we got burned the last time with Morris Claiborne back in 2012. I completely get that. However, when we talk about what this team actually needs, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and especially with the cornerback room, now that Trevon Diggs is gone and you're probably going to need to add another body in there, this is the best case scenario if you get wiped out with the edges, which is exactly what happened in this particular mock draft. The guys that I have at the top of my board for this edge class were completely gone. So to pivot, the Cowboys I have here going with Delane. Now, when we talk about Delane, the prospect, I absolutely love the versatility this guy has as a corner. Now, when it comes to Delane, I believe that he is the most complete cornerback coming into the 2026 NFL Draft. He has so much flexibility when it comes to playing nickel outside corner. You can maybe even slot him in at safety, and that is something that the Cowboys highly value. If you have been following the Cowboys for a long time, you would understand that the Cowboys love players that have position flexibility on either side of the football. So that's already a plus going in the Cowboys' favor of looking to select a guy like Delane if that ends up being the case. Now, the other thing, too, if you followed this guy's collegiate career, you would understand that he has thrived both in zone and man wherever he's gone. From Virginia Tech when he started out, going to LSU later, he has done phenomenally well regardless of the situation that he's been put in. And that's going to be very key for the next defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, especially when you're trying to pair a guy alongside DaRon Bland for the long haul. And considering the fact that Bland has had an injury history, and we are very well aware of that, you're going to need another guy in the room just in case something happens. I don't want the Cowboys to not touch the cornerback room because they already paid a guy in DaRon Bland. You're going to need to invest in that room long term regardless of the situation. And due to the fact that you have no day 2 picks in this draft, assuming you don't trade down, I think it is imperative that the Cowboys look to address corner if they don't do so in free agency. And for the Cowboys, having a guy of that caliber in your defense is going to help long term. But again, the only reason I went with him in this particular scenario is because the edge room got wiped out when it came to pick 12. So with that, I now want to move on to pick number 20 to see what we do there.
The Dallas Cowboys select
Anthony Hill Jr., linebacker, Texas. Now look, when it came to this mock draft, again, just like how it was at pick 12, there were no edges at this particular selection that I felt comfortable taking. And again, you don't have any day 2 picks, so whatever happens here, you are going to need to nail this selection and have a safe selection at that. And for the Cowboys, I would not be shocked if they went with a guy like Anthony Hill Jr. I absolutely love his quickness, especially laterally, and his acceleration. Just looking at what he can do on film specifically with those particular traits, that is exactly what the Cowboys are going to need in their linebacker room. We have seen several times throughout the 2025 NFL season, you lacked lateral quickness from your linebackers. And again, with DeMarvion Overshown still recovering from that injury he sustained in 2024, you didn't have that explosiveness that he had that you needed desperately in this defense. Now, a couple things that I noticed is he's going to need to work on his coverage skills a little bit more at the NFL level. Again, that's something that you can coach into him. I'm not particularly worried about that. And another thing that I noticed is sometimes he struggles from disengaging with more powerful offensive linemen if he's sent to pass rush. Now, like I said before, that's something you can definitely coach out of him. But with where we're at right now, the Dallas Cowboys need to add young defensive playmakers that have speed and can play smart football. And I think when you have a pairing in the guys that we selected in this particular mock draft, I think that is exactly what the Cowboys are going to need moving forward. Now, the problem with this particular mock draft is that you don't have any edges to come in and help produce. And I think that this is where the Cowboys, again, are going to need to spend some money in free agency because it is hard to address every single hole this team has that they have on defense without spending money. Now, I understand people will say, well, take the money that you have on the offensive side of the ball and throw it on the defensive side of the ball. And what I'll say to that is that I don't need the Dallas Cowboys to be a top 3 defense to succeed. I get that that would be awesome. I'm not trying to cope or say that we don't need something like that whatsoever. Obviously, we need defensive help. But when you really think about it, the Dallas Cowboys had just a below average defense, not a great defense. If they had a below average defense, this team would have made the playoffs. And so when we really think about it, the Dallas Cowboys' strength is their offense. And that's okay. I'm very big on strengthening your strength. And if we are an offensive juggernaut and all we need is enough defensive playmakers to make us, let's just say, the 16th best defense or higher, I think you can definitely do fine with that because when you look at the talent that you have on your defensive line, specifically in the interior, that's something that the Cowboys have not had in a long, long time, if at all ever, in the past, 15 seasons. Now, with the edges, yes, they're going to need to work on that, but this whole defense is going to need work, and I think having 2 top 20 picks is great. Now, the other discussion that comes into play is, do you trade those picks for more picks? Do you trade them for an already active player? And to be honest with you, I don't think that's something that I'm comfortable with doing at this particular point in time. I believe that's a conversation we need to have after the Cowboys have made enough moves throughout free agency, because typically it's during the draft where you see a lot of these players dealt, because when you get to the NFL draft, that's where a lot of teams get pressure to dealing away some of these players. So if you're someone that wants a Max Crosby, which I personally think the Raiders would not trade Max Crosby, hey, all you got to do is just wait until the NFL draft and give them a call if you want to trade one of your first-round picks for a guy like Max Crosby. Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up is the timeline that the Cowboys are currently on. The Cowboys are not in a rebuild, we can take a couple seasons to get things right type of scenario. They're not in a situation where they can afford to waste seasons, because for what it is, you already went through that soft retool in 2025 to start putting building blocks in place for 2026 and even 2027. You don't have the luxury of waiting Dak Prescott's not getting any younger. And if you're Jerry Jones and you talked about how your biggest regret was not having Tony Romo win a Super Bowl for you, you're going to have two big regrets because having two franchise quarterbacks land in your lap without having to spend premium draft capital is extremely rare and lucky. And the fact that you can't even get an NFC Championship game appearance out of that is embarrassing. I understand people will talk about the players and how they perform in the postseason. I get that, but you have to understand this, is that when it comes to winning championships, organizations win championships. If you are expecting one guy to carry you to a championship when there are other deficiencies on the roster that might not get you to that point, that's not on that one individual player. That's on the organization. That's why I get on the Joneses and the whole front office apparatus that they have set up more than I get on the players. Because when we talk about it, Dak Prescott can only do so much. And that's what I've talked about. If you followed me for the longest time, do I think that Dak Prescott can play the quarterback position at a top 10 level, even top 5 if he's hitting on all cylinders? Absolutely. But just because I say he can do that doesn't mean that he can do that on a consistent basis or carry you to a championship. I've said that. And the thing is that smart front offices understand the situations that they are in, especially at the quarterback position, and make things work. The Eagles are a prime example. Jalen Hurts, do I think that he's a top 5, top 10 quarterback? No. However, I do think he plays the quarterback position well enough to where you can win a championship with him if you put the right pieces around him, and that's exactly what he did. The Eagles didn't sit there and go like, okay, Jalen, we need you to do more with less because we can't afford other guys like we've heard Jerry and Steven talk about, oh, Dak needs to do more with less. That's bullshit. Listen, what the Eagles did was not sit on their laurels. They went out and they got playmakers on the offensive side of the ball, added guys on the defensive side of the ball, loaded the team up as best they could, and then made a offensive system, especially in that 2024 season, that made things work for Jalen and that offense to get them to a championship and win it. That's no slight on Jalen. I'm not taking away the accomplishments that he did. All I am saying is that furthers the point that organizations win championships. Because as we saw in 2025 with the Eagles getting bounced by the 49ers in the first round, when you structurally do not have a system in place that is beneficial to the players, it's going to show. And it ends up being the case where, okay, is it Jalen Hurts' fault that the Eagles season went to shit? Me personally, I don't think so. I don't think that he played well this particular season in some games, but at the end of the day, I think structurally when you saw how that offense was being run, that wasn't his fault. Also, when you look at how things are done on the offensive side of the ball and how things were managed, you could have done a better job in putting your players in the best position to win. And that's everything that I say what the Cowboys need to do. So serve that as a reminder as we go through the rest of these drafts. What we need to do this offseason is we need to do as best we can a job of making sure that we are spending money to plug up as many holes as possible so we're not going into the NFL draft being like, oh my God, we need to force a pick at this particular position. If not, we're screwed. With that, guys, I thank you guys so much for this first mock draft and little discussion we had here in today's show. If you haven't done so already, again, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys next week for the next Mock Draft Monday. All right, guys, have a good one. Goodbye.